Hello my gorgeous ones, welcome to Alicia Budget Beauty. My name is Alicia, here on my channel. I love all things affordable fashion and beauty. I do hauls, tutorials, reviews, palette rankings, all sorts of fun stuff. So if that sounds good to you, please subscribe, stick around, be a friend. All right, you guys, I used 17 palettes. Once again, that seems to, I swear I don't do this on purpose. Maybe it's subconscious, but I always seem to use 17 palettes in a month. I don't know what that's about, but I used 17 palettes again in the month of November. And so I'm going to rank those for you guys from least to best, quality, favorites. It's contingent upon different factors. So if you want to see my rankings of the 17 palettes I used in November, keep on watching. All right, you guys, so I did rank them again this month. I'm getting better about choosing between my children, basically, and ranking my palettes, even though it's really, really hard. But sometimes it's not even based on that one is necessarily better than the other. Maybe I just enjoy the color story more. Maybe I think I'll get more use out of it. So keep that in mind. There's only one that I'm decluttering out of this, and I think a lot of you will probably know what it is if you've been watching my other videos. It is the Alamar Cosmetics Destino palette. If you've been seeing my videos, you know I've been griping about this palette a little bit. It came in Ipsy for the month of November. And honestly, it's not that this is awful. It's really not. It's not a terrible palette. Number one, I don't like the packaging. I've already waxed on about that enough. It's a lock, unlock. I just don't see the need. And I don't like the wasted palette space here either. But for me, the color story was just kind of bleh. Like, I appreciated that Ipsy finally put in a palette that wasn't just all like this. You know, there is some color in here. It's not the right time of year though. And while some of these shades were pretty good, like the gold in here was pretty, and I do think that this teal shimmer was pretty, the mattes were just kind of blah, and I think it's a disjointed color story, and I just know I'm never, ever, ever gonna reach for this, and so I decided to declutter it. It's not awful. It's really, really not. I just have so much better. So this is number 17. All right, at number 16 is the Alter Ego Harmony palette. Now, I did get this one in PR along with the brushes. I have a video on it, and I love the brushes. I've been using them a lot. I really, really love them. I love the bag they come in. Really great quality. I actually bought 3 sets for teachers gifts for Christmas. So the Harmony palette, though, this is half good, half not. Well, I say 3/4, 4/5. I don't want to do the math. Maybe 4/5 good, 1/5 bad. So there is this formula in here that is like this. It's sort of a mix between a matte and a shimmer, but it gets hard pan immediately, and it's really, really hard to pick up. And I can't stand that formula in this palette. And there are 4 shades like that in here. The rest of them performed great. And actually this Charity shade right here and this Chorus shade, those shimmers I loved. And I created a beautiful look with this. I really, really did. And you can go watch it if you want to, if you're interested in it. But my whole review of this was that if you're willing to forego those 4 shades and know that you're not going to get very good quality out of those for the rest of the palette, if you didn't want to spend the money for the Natasha Denona version, then I would recommend it. But for me, I may end up decluttering this. I really did love my look, but it's just, I don't know, 4 shades in a palette I'm not going to use just kind of irks me. So it's not in declutter yet. It may be. Now the Mirage palette, the Sahara palette, I really, really love of theirs. But this one, not as much. But since I'm not decluttering it yet, it wasn't at the bottom. It's number 16. Okay, at number 15, and the next 3 are kind of just towards the bottom because they're smaller palettes. They're never going, unless they were just, I don't know, the most incredible formula in the world, they're not going to beat some of my larger palettes, even if the formula is really good. So this is the Profusion Cosmetics Snow Angel palette. This came in their holiday collection. I did an unboxing and a try on of all of those if you're interested. And I actually used this palette for blush. I mixed these 2, and then I also used the shimmers as highlights, and then I also used these on the eyes. This palette, this little quad is really, really good. I mean, really good. The pigmentation is there. The shimmers, I don't think are quite their best shimmers. You'll see some other Profusion palettes in this ranking that rank higher, and the shimmers in there are better than these, but they are still good. I think this is a cute little stocking stuffer. I'm keeping this around because I think like in a hurry, if I wanted to do either something holiday or even Valentine's, this is a perfect little quad for that. So it's good quality, it's just a quad. So it's gonna rank number 15. All right, next up we have the Marilyn Monroe eyeshadow palette from Wet n Wild. This came in that Marilyn Monroe collection. I also have a video on that trying on all the items, including this palette. The only reason why this is ranked number 14 is that it's just a little palette and it's neutral, but it is really, really good. I mean, sometimes you want a palette like this. I say this is those, you're in a hurry, a travel palette where you don't have to think about it. It works really, really well. It looks really beautiful. You don't have to decide between all the shades because it's this big palette. There sometimes is a need for a palette like this. There's no need to spend a lot of money on a palette like this though, I think. You know, you just need something that's beautiful, that works, that's inexpensive, and I think this is great for that. So that is why it is ranked at number 14. Okay, at number 13 is the Ilmakiage Color Boss Trendsetter Quad. Now, I recently showed this in my Ipsy unboxing, and it was actually the BoxyCharm by Ipsy. That's what this one came in. I already owned this. So this is the one I already own. I didn't touch the other one because it was brand new, and I think I'm gonna give it to a family member or something like that. But this is actually, I really, really like Ilmakiage's formula. This is at the bottom because it's a quad, but if this was a bigger palette and maybe had more variety in it, it could rank a whole lot higher, because what I like about these shadows, and I talked about that in the Ipsy video, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself if you watched it, but what I like about their shadows is they're not the most like bang, like when you're putting them on, you're not immediately aware that this is an incredible formula. It's once the look is done, it just looks flawless. It looks like a makeup artist, like you hired a makeup artist and you're not a makeup girl, and you said, I just want to look really beautiful for photos, for a wedding, something like that, or have a red carpet event if you know, or quasi-famous or famous, and they do your makeup. That's what it turns out. Every time I use their shadows, that's what it looks like. So it's not like, you know, the most eye-catching. It's just kind of perfection, effortless, easy, beautiful. But, you know, it's a little quad, so that's why it's number 13. But if it was a bigger palette, it could rank higher. All right, at number 12 is the Profusion Casper palette. I also have a video on this collection. I realized I reviewed a lot of collections in the month of November. It makes sense, it's holidays. You know, these brands were putting out full collections, so that's probably why. But if you wanna go see that, it was a really, really cute collection. Number one, I really like this packaging. I think it's really, really fun how this moves around in here. Here is the color story. And I really, really enjoy this palette. I mean, I don't want to go too much into it because I reviewed it already if you saw the video, but I say in there that the mattes are where it's at with this palette, but then you've got this one special formula in here, and you'll see this formula in another Profusion palette coming right up. But it's this squishy cream to powder formula that is so good. It rivals like some of like those high-end, like a Natasha Denona, you know, like some indie brands that could do that. It's really, really good. There's a few shimmers in here that fell a little bit more flat. There's only one shade I struggled with. It was this purple right here. Otherwise, the like pastels and midtones in here worked so well. So I really, really enjoyed this palette. And I mean, there's nothing really wrong with it. There's just some that are better. All right, coming in at number 10 is another Profusion palette. It is the Ethereal palette. And honestly, I had this one for a long time. And I finally busted it out to use, and I don't know what I was waiting for. Okay, there's that squishy. This fluorescence is a like duochrome cream to powder that is so beautiful, but then this shimmer delicate, I love a beautiful pink shimmer. I like them when they have like a blue reflect to them and a purple reflect, or maybe like a champagne, or they're just plain pink. This one is so, so pretty. The mattes in here take a little bit more building up, but that's fine. Like, I don't have to have amazing pigment. I want pigment. I don't want no pigment. But sometimes really bam pigment can be more difficult to, you know, shear out, to blend. And these take just a little bit of building, but the look was so, so pretty. And I like this color story slightly more than the Casper. That's why it's ranked right above it. Otherwise, formula-wise, they're pretty much the same, although I think the shimmers in here may be a little bit better. All right, at number 9 is the Juvia's Place, the Candy Shop. Now, I've only used this once. I could definitely see this going way, way up. I just don't really feel right about using it once and putting it higher. So I kind of had to put it in the middle of the pack, but I really, really enjoyed the look I created for this. I did it for their Black Friday sales. They had sent this to me, and somehow I missed that this palette even existed. I have several of their other palettes. The one that's close to this is the Juvia's Garden, but it's more pastels. This has more mid-tones in here. But I used a few of the pinks, and then this is so pretty. This swirly one here has like a pink blue shift to it. This shimmer, again, is one of those metallic-y pinks that I just go crazy for. So color story wise though, I don't see that this would ever be a favorite for me necessarily, because it's somewhat limiting in the color story. I mean, you have to want to go pretty, you know, bright, cheery with this, but the formula is so, so good. And you guys, just like a little heads up on my eyes today, I don't have this in the ranking because I'm filming this on December 1st. And I don't think the lighting is doing this justice, but this is the Galactic palette from Juvia's. I just got it in and I had to dip in. I did swatches on my stories on Instagram because there are 4 duochromes in there. And I was like, what? And then today I used some of the shimmers that aren't even duochromes, and they're so pretty. I have a feeling that palette is going to soar to the top for me. So stay tuned for that ranking and see where that one falls. All right, coming in at number 9, this is where I really started to kind of struggle on where to rank things. So number 9 is going to go to Iconic London Booming and Gleaming palette. Now, I've talked about this palette quite a bit in the last couple of months because I have actually gotten really good use out of this. And what I will say about this palette is that mattes, I'll say mattes. The mattes are so good in here, and it's one of those that you just pull out when you're specifically looking for something, like looking for a neutral look, or hey, I want to do a smoked out, I want to come in neutral and like a smoked out wing. Well, here you go. The shimmers are okay in here. They're not great. If the shimmers were amazing in here, this would be one of my favorite neutral palettes. But it's very easy to work with. I do like my looks with this. I do find it useful. So even though it's not the most exciting color story and the shimmers are just okay, I don't know, I keep reaching for it. So it's got to rank in here decently. So I decided to put it as number 9. Okay, at number 8, and I was like, do I rank this a little bit higher? But now I'm just kind of going with like versatility and color story somewhat. So at number 8 is the Moira Cosmetics Time to Shine palette. You guys, this palette is so good. It is so good and it is so pretty. The shimmers are very smooth. They're not necessarily sparkly. Let me just show you. But they are smooth and they're pigmented. Sort of metallic-y, but a little bit, let me just swatch them on my hand. So here they are. Aren't those pretty? They're just, they're very flattering on the eyes, so you don't have to worry too much about texture with them. And I mean, this is like a perfect everyday palette. This is a perfect fall palette for sure. I could see this in spring too with some of the lighter greens, and it kind of reminds me color story wise of my Sydney Grace, the Mountain Trail palette. So like earthy, you know, this is a good earthy tones palette. The mattes are also so good. I talk about Moira all the time. I really, really love their palettes. They are a great affordable brand. So I'm decided to put this right here, definitely in the top 10. Okay, at number 7 is this gargantuan palette from Beauty Bay. It is the Jade palette. Now, this was hard. This was hard to know where to rank this, and I feel like a little bit deceiving, and I just will be honest. I've only used this palette 3 times. I've owned it for a long time, but I've only used it 3 times. I think one reason for that is it's enormous and it is somewhat overwhelming. Not that I don't know what to do with this, I do. It's just like if I think, okay, I want to do like a pink leaning look, then I'm gonna grab like a palette that I know that has lots of pinks. It's not often that I'm just like, I have no idea what I want to wear today. Let's just close my eyes and pick out a palette. That's how this would get chosen pretty much. But I think I need to study it more, because even as I'm looking at it, talking to you guys, you know, this row right here is each row is fairly cohesive. But if you kind of, you know, those paintings or those where you let your eyes cross and then you can all of a sudden see the image, that's kind of how this is. You have to kind of just let your eyes go like this and you're like, whoa, I actually see this makes a little bit more sense than it does at first. So quality though is really, really, really good in this palette. I mean, Beauty Bay, I've grown to really appreciate them. This is also a very affordable palette. I don't think it's available anymore, though this was a collab, but Beauty Bay in general is a very, very good formula at a cheap price. So I don't know, man. This is just, it's too big. It is, but the quality is good and I like my looks. So that's why it's number 7. Coming in at number 6 is the Nomad Cosmetics Hudson Valley palette. Now, this is a palette that I wore for my ranking of best, I didn't really rank them, but my Thanksgiving palette recommendations, because this is just an ultimate quintessential fall looking palette. I think this is one of my favorites of Nomads. It's not the most splashy, you know, like it doesn't have the new duo multi-chromes of Royal Europe or the, you know, wow factor of the Ghost Town USA cover. But this is a really, really good solid palette, and I really love the shimmers in here. I know there's been talk about Nomad shimmers being like somewhat inconsistent palette to palette. I think they do have it down now though for the future, but I liked the shimmers in this palette a lot, and it's just really flattering on. These tones I think are super flattering, and yeah, that's why it's number 6. All right, at number 5, we have the Lunar Beauty Siren Sunset palette. Now, I have a plan, just a little teaser, for another video with this, kind of comparing it to another newer palette I have that is much more affordable. Not that the color stories are the same, they're actually quite different, but I kind of have a suspicion that they have the same formula, but one is a lot cheaper. And there are multi-chromes or duochromes in here like the other palette. That'll be a whole different video, and we're gonna discuss some other things about where palettes are made in that video. So just make sure you're subscribed if that interests you. But just based off this palette alone, I really, really enjoyed this palette. I think some people didn't love this color story. They expected, oh, Siren Sunset, like the outside cover. They wanted it to be very mermaid-like, but I like that this is kind of like the deep murky, and it makes sense, you know, like a siren. I know siren and mermaid are supposed to be interchangeable, but I think you consider siren to be a little bit of the like darker version of a mermaid. So like I think of like the deep, dark, abysmal sea and the creature below, and then they rise to the top and there's this like setting sunset. So like I totally get the vibes of this palette. And I really enjoyed the multi-chromes in here. I think 2 that really surprised me are the topper shades in here, this pink pearl and this water nymph. I don't always love topper shades like this, but they are beautiful in the inner corner. So those are definitely two of my favorite shades in here. And I do think this can be wearable every day, you know, with these neutrals right here, or you can go deeper with the colorful tones in here. So it is number 5. All right, number 4 could easily be my number 1 because it's one of my favorite palettes. This is just based off of versatility, basically. But this is the Minka palette from Adept. Definitely one of my favorite Adept palettes. And this, anytime I think, okay, I want a blingy looking, shiny, sparkly eye, an eye-catching eyelid, this is something I would definitely go for. I also think it screams holiday and it screams New Year's Eve. I wore it on New Year's Eve last year. Just the shimmers in here are so bam. But there's only 2 mattes and they're not my favorite mattes either, but I love this palette. Like, it's a special palette. It's one that is like a go-to when I'm looking for something specific. So that is why it's number 4. But if you gave me like some of my other palettes in my collection, rank them, this could easily be number 1. Okay, coming in number 3 is a newer palette to me. This is the What's Up Beauty Dragon Eye palette. So I've only used this one twice, so maybe it's not fair that I've ranked it so high, but I have a good feel of this palette. I mean, it's not the largest palette in the world. You know, you have what? 12 shadows? Did I just do the math? Yes, okay. You have 12 shadows in here. I think I just spit. If you saw spit, I spit. I did that. Okay, imagine it's dragon fire instead. All right, so I think I've used most of the shades in here. Maybe, let's see, 1, 2. I think I haven't dipped into 3 or 4. But so far the mattes are very, very smooth, very blendable. They're also not the most pigmented right off the bat, but they blend really easily together. I understand this color story. I know some were disappointed in it because they just thought outside packaging, dragon, I think they thought all jewel tones. I liked the surprise that this was a more muted color story that lets the special shades do all the sparkle and all the talk. I like that. That's been kind of my preferred look lately, is a more neutral or subdued matte and just let like a shimmer, a duochrome, multi-chrome do all the talking. I think that's so beautiful. So, and the shimmers in here are just, they're gorgeous. They're those really sparkly, ethereal, eye-catching when it hits the light type of shimmers. And I'm really, really enjoying this. Coming in number 2 is the Cozy Cabin palette, Holiday Edition by Simply Posh Cosmetics. This was a new formula all around for them, the mattes and the special shades in here, the duochrome shimmers. I think this is their best palette to date. I don't know if it's my favorite. It's definitely one of my favorite color stories, if not my favorite color story they've done as well. But quality wise, it's definitely their best. I loved my looks with this palette. I think it's extremely versatile because you have warm, you have cool, you have fall looking, you have winter looking, but then I think you can transition really beautifully into spring with some of these lighter shades in here as well. So I love this brand. You know, I've tried a lot of brands now in the past couple of years, worked with a lot of them too, seen some of them change for the worse, for the better. And I think that they've evolved in such a beautiful way. So I'm a big fan of this brand, and it is number 2. All right, coming in at number 1, my favorite palette that I tried in November is my Wicked Widow Beauty Resurrection palette. Some of you may not be surprised, I think. So here is the color story. You guys, I just think this palette is so freaking special. Number 1, the color story. She did it first. I think there are some others coming out recently. The Blend Bunny new palette. I was gonna get that palette, and I still may do a video. You guys seem to really like the video where I talked about recent launches that I didn't pick up or that I did pick up and why, and then ones coming in the future if I'm gonna pick them up or not and why. Well, originally I thought I was going to get that Blend Bunny palette, but when I saw the reveal, it was so similar to this one, and I think this one is better. I just do. I think it's curated a little bit better. And I hate to say that because I know Blend Bunny, it's like a special palette honoring her father and he helped her select it. And no, like, I'm not saying it's not a beautiful palette. It's just, there's no need for me to buy that palette when I have this one. And I adore this one. I adore the formula. I love that it's a grungy rainbow. I love that you have smoky tones in here. The only thing I can't really do with this, obviously, is like a neutral look. But if I want a grungy look, if I want a smoky look, if I want even kind of like a primary color look, and then I can also, if I want a green, a red, a purple, a gray, like I love this palette. I really, really do. I know it's expensive. I know some people didn't love the price of this, but you got to think this is a larger palette with a bunch of duochromes in here. And she does have her own formula. That's another thing that's been discussed recently. There's a lot of these brands out there that are using the same formula as others and marking their prices up. She has her own formula, so I think it's worth it. Love it. And that is why it's number 1. All right, you guys, that is my ranking for November. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, have fun shopping, budget shopping. Bye.